Welcome to Lecture 9.2 on Human Development. So today we're going to look at attachment. But first I want to talk briefly about what's called a sensitive learning period. Sensitive learning periods are those times during which specific skills or behaviors are most easily acquired. So developmentally, we were talking about milestones earlier and how these happen sequentially, and that they're universal. We see the same thing happening with language. The two best examples of sensitive learning periods that I have are attachment and language. So when it comes to language, we're born, we don't have the ability to speak. We develop the ability to speak very, very quickly. We become fluent within 3 years of birth in our native tongue. There is a sensitive period, a sensitive learning period for language, and that is birth to 7. But it's the birth to 3 period. Children are just little language sponges. It's quite astonishing. And infants understand a lot more language than they're able to replicate. So their understanding of language far outpaces their ability to produce language. The best example I have is a friend of mine. When he was young, his physicians and his parents thought he was developmentally delayed. But he wasn't. He was deaf. But he's a little guy. He can't tell everyone. He doesn't know that he's supposed to be able to hear things. And I asked him, what was your hearing like at that time? And he said, it was as if I was underwater. He did not have his surgery until he was 7 years old. He was right on the cusp of that learning period, of that sensitive period. Thankfully, doctors figured out what was going on. He's got normal hearing now, but even in middle-aged, you can notice slight language issues with him. And, he's a middle school teacher. He does just fine. I don't think the average person would notice a occasional language glitch, but I found it very interesting that 40 years later, he still has not a deficit, but there's an echo of deficit, if that makes sense. Because he was at the end of that sensitive learning period for language. And the older a child gets in that sensitive period for language, so birth to 7, but birth to 3 is when children learn language most rapidly. And they can learn any language. It doesn't matter what language it is. There was a study that showed that infants who were not native Chinese speakers, that up until the age 9 months, they could hear subtle differences in pronunciation and in sound. They would have learned Chinese very, very quickly had they been exposed to that. After that first year, we can't even hear it. As American speakers, sorry, that was awful, as English speakers, we cannot hear those subtle differences and nuances. I love Chinese dramas. I love them. I cannot hear the subtle little nuances. I would never become completely fluent in Chinese because I can never hear the nuances that a child born in China would hear, surrounded by people who speak Chinese. I want to talk about attachment now. Attachment also has a sensitive learning period. And that period is birth to age 3 or 4. we're going to go with 3. So, attachment is defined as a strong, intimate, emotional connection between people that persists over time and across circumstances. Psychologist John Bowlby was one of the first psychologists to do some in-depth research on human attachment. And he noticed something that was really interesting. So when we have our infants, we are very, we just want to interact with them all the time. And I'll talk about the role of oxytocin in a little bit. But Bowlby recognized that our infants and children pull us to engage with them. That first social smile. Parents just lose it over that first social smile. They lose it because their infant has acknowledged them. That they're not just some object in their environment. The social smile is an infant's way of grabbing an adult and facilitating additional interactions and pleasant interactions. So Bowlby recognized that there's this give and take when it comes to infant and child interactions, that infants actually have the ability to pull us towards them emotionally. So I want you to go and watch a video titled Harlow's Monkeys, and that is found in the folder titled Chapter 9, Development Lecture Videos. A word of warning, this is a very difficult study to watch, and I can understand if you don't make it all the way through. I mean, it's not bloody, it's just incredibly sad. But it is an excellent look at the study of attachment. So please go watch that now. Welcome back. So, it used to believe that the belief was that our infants attach to us because we provide them with the bare necessities. Basically food, comfort. Harlow, psychologist, hypothesized that maybe it's not the provision of basic needs, that it's giving infants comfort contact. It's actually helping our infants soothe and calm down, and that pleasant experience of comfort contact is what facilitates attachment. So as you saw in the video, Harlow was working with baby rhesus monkeys, and he had 2 mothers. Both of them were made out of chicken wire and these weird little toy things for faces. One of the chicken wires was wrapped in terry cloth and the other was not. Now both provided milk through a bottle. Because Harlow is testing, is it the meeting of basic needs like food that facilitates attachment, or is it comfort contact? Harlow found that baby rhesus monkeys would cling to the terry cloth mother during the day and would run to her when they were distressed. They would only go to the wire mother when they were hungry. And so when they needed food, they would go to the wire mother. But they would cling to the terry cloth mother even as they did that. They would lean way over so that they could grab the nipple on the bottle, because they didn't want to give up that comfort contact. I know that video is hard to watch. Seeing how Harlow terrorized those little babies, I find that difficult. It does give an example of what Harlow was looking at. When babies were scared, they would rush to this terry cloth. And then they would calm down. Just being able to hold on to something soft helped them calm down. It wasn't food that facilitated a relationship, a calming relationship. It was the comfort contact. I don't think any institutional review board would allow Harlow's study now. The damage to the infant rhesus monkeys was just too great. And as you read in Chapter 2, researchers have an ethical responsibility to the treatment of animal subjects. We have to care for animals just as much as we care for human subjects. Harlow, yeah, misses the mark on that. The study is incredibly unethical. But we're looking at that through 70 years of history. So it was really sad to see in some of the studies, some of the babies didn't have access to comfort contact, and those infants became very, very damaged, very emotionally disturbed. So Harlow did a great job with his hypothesis and proving his hypothesis. The matter that he did so was incredibly unethical. So we'll end here and move to 9.3.